God is a selfless lover. Welcome, friends, to Ignatian Inspirations. The seekers of God need to be extremely careful of an impending danger in our spiritual journey. Our enthusiasm to reciprocate our love for God, who loves us selflessly, may subtly lead us to indulge in self-glory if we are not aware of. Instead of worshipping God, we may gradually land up in worshipping our ego. Quite often, it can happen. What we want to do for God may not be necessarily what God wants us to do for Him. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits and a mystic of the 16th century, writes in his book, The Spiritual Exercises, everyone ought to reflect that in all spiritual matters, the more one divests oneself of self-love, self-will, and self-interests, the more progress one will make. Divesting of self-love and spiritual progress are interrelated. Our attempts to make ourselves holy or doing service for God on our own efforts may be sometimes a futile exercise. How hard we may try, we cannot make it happen. Spiritual growth necessarily demands shedding of our ego. Ignatius, after his conversion, overindulged himself in performing so many the so-called spiritual activities like excessive fasting, penances, too many hours of prayer, etc. The result was that he was ruining his health and was suffering from scruples that tormented him mercilessly. It was only when he, in his powerlessness, cried out in pain, saying, "Lord, help me," he felt the need of God. Till that moment, Ignatius was in charge of himself. But now he surrendered himself to God. It was only after this surrender his spiritual progress took an extraordinary turn, because from then on, God took charge of Ignatius. Letting God take charge of myself implies discerning at every moment of my life as to what God wants me to do here and now. This is called discerning love. God's initiating, sustaining, and perfecting grace is always active in us. God is a selfless lover. True love is selfless like that of God. Discerning to do God's will is nothing but loving God selflessly, because what I want to do for God may not be necessarily what God wants me to do for Him. In the name of God, we do so many things. But does God really want all these things?